bass.
Welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine. If you enjoy this programming, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Join Truth and Rhythm's membership program through Patreon. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkandstuff.net. At that site, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk. Shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm.
It is an honor to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership legendary jazz fusion drummer, producer, composer, arranger, and band leader Billy Cobham. Milestones of his early career included positions with Miles Davis's band and the Mahavishnu Orchestra, as well as dozens of recordings and shows with a who's who of jazz greats. He launched a prolific solo career in 1973 with the landmark fusion album Spectrum, and has released dozens of LPs while contributing to hundreds of other artists' work during an astonishing 50-plus year career. His unique combination of power, precision, and speed has amazed millions and influenced legions of drummers, and he continues to perform today. Billy, it's a thrill to have you. How are you?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm quite honored to be here on your show, and I'm doing pretty good. Just celebrated number 79 on the 16th of May, and I survived it, so I think I'm doing okay.
Well, you look well, you sound well, and you're still playing, so God bless, Yeah,
thank you. Thank you very much.
So you're overseas from where I am right now. Why don't you tell everybody where you are?
I'm in Bern, Switzerland, and have lived there now for about 44 years. In Switzerland, between Zurich and Bern. Bern is about 20 years now, and it's been the land of education. The reason why I came was because I was curious as to what the alternatives were in terms of performances and teaching and work, generally speaking, for an artist. I should say of myself, someone who was not totally accomplished. I was looking to learn more, actually going into the history of performance of my predecessors to understand what they were doing, and so it would make my presence or my presentations more meaningful, because I feel that in order to play well, you need to have that area in your mind of history when you work with anyone. They say, okay, play a solo. You're playing alone, but you're not. You're playing with the spirits of all of those who came before you, if you understand what they did when they were around and how that relates to what you do in the present. Then it means the future is going to have some kind of meaning, and that's always been my presence.
Honoring the legacy, so important. And, that's why we're here today, to make sure your legacy is is preserved as well. So thank you for doing this,
Okay.
Billy. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
So I know you started drums very young, born in Panama, grew up in Brooklyn area, which is where my folks are from, actually. But
Let's die.
yeah.
Flatbush. Yeah. Yeah. East New
How
York.
how how and when, obviously you were drawn to the drums early, but at what point was there a turning point where you decided this is actually what I'm going to pursue as my life's calling?
Yeah. I don't think I was more than about 6 or 7, but I hung out with a group of kids that were straight out of how can I put it? There was a TV show, and I'm trying to remember the name of them. There was such a spanking out gang. All of our gang.
Little Rascals.
Yeah, it was kind of like that around in as we say around our way back then. And of course, being the little guy, no one really listened to me very much. Everybody else was bigger than me, taller, and they were always chatting, and I was just listening, trying to getting inside the cracks. But of the conversations, and so one day it came to the head, and this was in between. This is when you're out of school, summertime. There's nothing to do on the block except sit down and talk until it gets too hot to be outside in Brooklyn around in the middle of July back then. And everybody goes home because there's nothing else to talk about. We're too tired to do anything else. But before we go, it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everybody points and points and points and points. And finally they get around to the little guy, which is me, and they said, Bill, what do you want to be? And I said, I want to be a musician. They said, you can't play anything. And now we get into, oh, yes, I can. Oh, no, you can't. Oh, yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Until finally they'll show us. So all that we had to play, had to play on was my father's 1952. Yeah, it was a 1952 Chrysler, and it was not new. So that would mean maybe it was a 2-year-old car. So that was 1954. So I'm just 10 years old, not 6. And I start to play this Latin, what I call my version of a mambo or something like that, as if I were a conguero. And they all tried to do it the same way, and they couldn't do it. And it made me feel even bigger because I had something they didn't have, and it never left me. I just decided, I think I found a home. And here I am.
Wow. And I know that you ended up going to the Army, and
Yep.
I think that really helped with your regimentation and your discipline and the craft, right?
Absolutely. And the only reason why I got into the United States Army Band was because of my preparations prior to that, which brought me into. Now you might have heard of this group. It's called the Crown of Carolina. It's a drum and bugle corps. If you haven't, I highly recommend you look it up on Google. They're amazing. The arrangements are off the hook. It's a competitive marching and maneuvering corps, and they play every conceivable kind of rudiment you could ever want, but musically, not robotically. They've taken it and become part of it, and they made it part of their music, how they express themselves in percussion. They also have a percussion battery, and it's like a lot of marching bands you're seeing, but these not just marching down the street. They do a between 15 and 20-minute presentation. It's drum and bugle corps, synchronous marching combined with opera, with ballet. I mean, it's so much going on at the same time, and they're playing very complex harmonically, melodic music at the same time. And it's they're just one of many that happened. And I happened to be in one of those drum corps when I was 16, 17 years old, through to the year that I was brought into the United States Army. And so I specialized in that part of it. So that was one section of the Army I had to do. And I excelled in it. So I was at the Naval School of Music, which at that time it was what it was called in Scope, which was in Virginia. And that's where I met Grover Washington, Cecil Bridgewater. See who else was there with me? John Charles, Roger Glenn, whose father was the great Tyree Glenn trombonist with Louis Armstrong, and we all were in the Army bands, different Army bands, and then we came together. I was doing a lot of teaching there at the same time because they needed teachers, and even without stripes, I had, and I never got a chance to go to college. I was already working and teaching because was an instructor in drum corps. So there was a lot of stuff like that happening. Plus I had to play in big bands. I was already in the studios before I went to the Army. So I brought a lot of information just in terms of street smarts and things like that to the Army, and gave me a chance to test and check out a lot of things. I was taking music, which I think they might still have to this day. They do have a file on me there. I took the West Side Story Buddy Rich album and transposed it for drum set. A lot of guys had to take that test to get in. I wish them luck. There you go. It's a Billy's curse. No, don't tell anybody. Anyway, so it was that. And I just kept my head into music from that point on. At the School of Performing Arts, where I went to school as a high school, it was on the New York City College campus. It's now called Fiorello LaGuardia School for the Performing Arts in Lincoln Center. But there used to be two schools. LaGuardia School up in Harlem, which is where I went, and there was one down in Midtown Manhattan that took also a lot of young artists who danced and sang more. Whereas uptown, it was singers, painters, visual artists and instrumentalists. And so for the symphony. And so we got a chance to do a lot of things for the city youth orchestra and stuff like that. It's a 4-year program. And you had to have not only an audition, but a recommendation from a professional to get in, things like this. And since New York was why they call it the Apple, so many musicians there that were highly, Miles Davis amongst them all, people like that, or Roy Haynes, and I happen to know some, and they supported me in getting in, my mom and I, to get into the place.
Who were, if I could jump in, Billy, who were a couple of your biggest influences? So was it Buddy Rich and some other, Horace Silver?
One of my biggest interests, support, I'm sorry, interest, was Sonny Payne, who was a drummer who played with Count Basie's band. Again, I highly recommend to everybody, check out Sonny Payne. If you don't know, you should know. You'll see. He wasn't a Buddy Rich, but he was himself. And that was more, because there was already a Buddy Rich. There's already a Louis Bellson. And again, we come back to history. Why were these guys like that? What did they do that was so special? That made them unique, made them stand out? It was their desperation to earn a living, to survive, in a way that is not necessary, at least not shown often today. Uh, you get yourself an AC plug and you plug something in, you throw in a couple of records on top, you scratch them up or whatever. You come up with some ideas that way. I'm not putting that down. But then when that same person comes to me in a course of a limited course for maybe 4 or 5 weeks and asks me to teach him or her how to play like they did, quote unquote, back in the day, it's very, very difficult for me to really find a handle for them to grab musically, since they have no understanding of how everything worked back in the day. They only know about right now, and they're only interested really in what happens right now, because what they're trying to do is to come up with a different combination of gimmicks that will give them a chance to get the next project tomorrow or the next day, and then throw that out and try something else. Not that much of a change from the past, except that all we had back in the day as drummers were drumsticks, drums, to play on, and the knowledge of what we're going to play is going to represent what was played before. Nothing new. The only thing new about what we're playing is us, because we weren't there before. But we're brand new to this earth. So we're going to play and interpret how Max Roach and Elvin Jones and all those people played, but only to a certain degree. And then we're naturally going to go off on a tangent on our own. That's only part of what we'd have to do when we play. We have to find a way to combine all of those ideas that we're kind of mildly stealing from, which is nothing wrong with it because they got nothing else, to take them and turn them into something that represents us, really. And the first one you have to convince is yourself. So there you go.
Back then, Billy, were you pretty much exclusively dialed into jazz, or were you also taking in what was happening in rock? It was happening maybe in R&B. What were you dialed into? What were you listening to back then in the early days?
Back then, there was something called pop, which there is now, but it's a little bit different. A pop artist, just take one. Frank Sinatra was a pop artist with his own radio station, because he had so many hits that's all they played was him. That's a big salute. It wasn't that they were being biased on purpose. It's just that he sold really well to the audience. And then another hit group would be Count Basie's band, pop radio, Count Basie's band, pop radio, Duke Ellington, pop radio, Stan Kenton. All these things were happening back then because that's who the population was in one respect. So you heard them on AM radio, okay? FM was just in its infancy back then. And then you have, and it sounded better, by the way, than AM. Had broader bands and, it was beautiful sound. Well, let's not get started on that. But anyway, so you had that kind of situation. I listened to a lot of that because my father was a pianist as a hobbyist. My father was actually a mathematician. And so this was something he did as, by the way, kind of thing. Yeah, we never had a piano in the house, yet he played piano. And he never studied piano. He just knew how to play the piano. Just one of those things. So kind of blessing, kind of curse. I don't know. But it helped to get a few more bucks in the house. So he listened to all these musicians, the Dizzy Gillespie's, and all of that was common every day, 7 days a week. Not a day off, and not loud, just always in the house. You get that kind of stuff going on through the house all the time, something's going to stick, and for me, it was some of the best years of my life. Never really knowing who it was, but remembering all the songs that they performed over the radio or on records, which my parents had. We listened to that. We listened to Latin music a lot because we're from Panama. So, of course, the whole Latin thing was pretty strong. Rock and roll, no. It wasn't, and the beauty of it was I just wasn't interested. I heard more than the blues. Coming from a lot of artists, a lot of chord changes, and so the immersion. I was immersed. I was put into the forms of ABA forms. I mean, all of this kind of stuff. I could understand how one section led to the other. How music could be created as an arrangement naturally, just because I heard it all the time, and it just made sense. If it, unless it had to go someplace else for some reason, unless I had to force it that way, I had a basic form to deal with in my mind, and so that's how I play today. Again, from the position of creating form, choosing the notes on the drum that will connect the ideas that I create within my head before I play them on the instrument.
And your first studio experience recording, was that with George Benson or Horace Silver, or what was that?
That was with George Benson. No, it was not. It was the first studio. No, it was Horace Silver. Serenade to a Soul Sister.
Yeah, I showed them both being 1968, so I wasn't sure which came first.
Yeah, it would be Serenade to a Soul Sister. It was probably my first professional recording. Yeah.
Do you remember that experience? Were you intimidated? Were you just gung-ho,
I was not intimidated at all. I've never been intimidated by playing music with anybody. I've always wanted to focus on the educational side, accessing their ideas, trying to understand how I could play with them to enhance what they were offering and make it stronger from a rhythmic perspective. Always, never was. The last time I was afraid to be on stage with anybody was when I had to do, I think it was Christmas Carol, Dickens, when I was about 6. It was fun. I never got the words out. I was just too afraid. But aside from that, no, that's why I never sing. I can't get that together. I go, duh. But the drums became my wall, my environment that they could hide me, sort of, and I could play my organ, if you will. That's why I felt like J.S. Bach. That's pretty much how I felt.
I imagine you had to learn a bit, of the difference of recreating the sounds you wanted in a studio environment versus the stage.
All of that. Every day was a learning experience. Came over quite a long time, maybe 60 plus years. Yeah.
What was your first impression meeting Miles Davis? What were those circumstances like?
Well, meeting him, I was playing in a band either with Junior Mans or Charlie Mingus at the top of the Village Gate. And downstairs was the Miles Davis Quintet with Jack DeJohnette, Chick Corea, Dave Holland, and I think, and Wade Shorter. And in a break, Jack came up and said to me that he wanted to know if I would be interested to play with Miles. At first, I thought he was just winding me up, and I said, "Oh, sure, man." And then I saw he was serious. He said, "You serious?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." Said, "Okay, I'm going to tell him that you're into it because I already told him I'm leaving." And he was going to do something with Charles Lloyd, I think, and Keith Jarrett or something. And so I wasn't going anywhere because I had 3 more sets to play. So he said, "Miles will come in the audience and listen to you, what you're doing, and he'll probably give you a call." And sure enough, a couple of days later, my girlfriend was very, very upset because some guy on the phone was talking like he had marbles in his mouth. He couldn't make himself clear. And I said, "Marbles in his?" Now the alarm bells are going on in my head. Did he speak up? She said, he kept whispering. I said, "Okay, give me the phone." Quick. Called. This Billy Cobham. "Yeah, CBS, 10 o'clock, Studio G tomorrow morning." And hung up on me. And the rest is history.
How long did it take before you felt at home and comfortable with him on stage?
I never played with him on stage. I played with him in the studio.
In the studio, then?
Mm-hmm. From the very first note, I had no problem. Actually, I had one problem. It became a problem when he said to me on one of those sessions, we had a little rehearsal. He said, "You're playing something. I like that. Remember that tomorrow. You got to play it." He said, "Right?" And I went, "Uh-huh." Yeah, that thing's long gone. I couldn't remember what I had done. I went, "Oh, God." So all night I'm thinking, what did I play? What did I play? Get into the studio. Everything's going fine. Everything's going fine. He said, "Billy, you had that thing. I want you to play that now." I said, "Okay." And I started playing something. He said, "No, that's not what it was, but I like that. Play that." And I went,
Covered yourself. Good thing you had such an arsenal of great stuff to go to. That band.
I didn't know.
That band with Miles, when you were there, though, you were playing with people like Herbie and Michael Henderson, right?
Yeah. I was very blessed. To this day, I'm very blessed with the people that I've been able to perform with all the way to last weekend. It's just been beautiful. If I had to do it again, I don't know how I could change it. Mistakes and all. That's the way you learn.
Now, did you play on Bitches Brew or not? Because I'm a little confused with Lenny White. I think he did something related to Bitches Brew.
Lenny White was a major force on that record. I thought, from last I heard, I thought that Jack had something to do with it at some point. Lenny, mostly, if I'm not mistaken. This is just from my perspective. We made in about a year, or even less. I recorded so much music with Miles in Columbia. I'm not sure what I'm on. I just know that there's a box set that says I'm on about 6 or 7 records. There may be a track of me on something, but most of it, I had no idea. There were no titles for anything. Music that was written was very, very, very sparse. We played more what we felt and heard. So I think whatever Lenny says one would have to go along with. I know I was on the only record I know I'm on is a freak of nature. It was something that was not supposed to happen. And that's called Jack Johnson. The reason why that happened, why I know that, is because we rehearsed something completely different from what we played on that record. How that music came to be on that record was just based on the fact that kids, as we were back then, just fidgety. We're here, we want to play. We're here, we want to play. And it's like, say, mom or dad said, sit here, be quiet, don't move. You sit there. And then all of a sudden, you start to go, because you're a kid and you're thinking about things. And the same thing happened there. John McLaughlin had some ideas in his head, and Miles said, I'm going in the studio, I have to go to the control room for a minute. Don't play. I'll be right. And he just went into, so we're sitting there 5 minutes, maybe not even that. John goes, just, and Michael Henderson, he hears it, lightly. Now they've got this groove, and I'm just sitting there, and Mr. Son, man, it's Steve Grossman's just standing, he's not doing anything, and I'm trying to hang with Steve and nothing. But all of a sudden, my hands start moving, and they're playing. All of a sudden, we've got this shuffle, and it's growing, and it's growing, and it's growing. Miles comes out, and says, I told you not to play in between takes. Everybody stopped. Now I'm thinking like, oh God, I mean, I lost the account. Everything's through the window, you're gonna tell us to get out. No, it goes back inside, control room. They're still talking. McLaughlin smiling now, because now it's a game. It starts again. And it starts to build again. It's again, Miles said, and it comes out and he's trying to, stop it. Now John thinks it's a game, and he's starting to smile because, man, I can't, we got to keep playing. Miles goes inside, John starts playing again, and that we end up like, it's just sitting there, and all of a sudden the hands started moving, and we started playing. We got to a point where it was grooving so heavy that that's what you have on the record, right? And Miles just came out and said to TMSL, red button was record. What was supposed to be a 3-hour session was done in a half an hour. And so we got it. I don't need any more. And that's the only record that I know I for sure played on.
It's something how it came together.
Very organic.
And you and John ended up leaving for the Mahavishnu Orchestra. How did that kind of come together? Did you initiate it to John, or what? How did you guys come to do that?
I'd worked with John on how'd that work? I was working with John from time to time on a recording session or to someone else's sessions. And he came to me and asked me if I would help him out with some music that was that he was working on. We could just go into a rehearsal room, drums and guitar, and pull together some things that he had in mind, some ideas. And I wasn't working a whole lot. So, of course, it was back in the day where, everything was designed to just pick up and go as quickly as you can. So I had a drum set that I had a 20-inch bass drum with a 14-inch bass, a 16-inch tom-tom that went inside of it, all single-headed, and then a 16 went in, a 13 went through inside the 16, and a 10 went inside the 13, and that was in one case and soft case, and then in the other hand I had a trap case with cymbals and snare drum and stands and seat. And I could get on the New York City surface bus line for 20 cents, 25 cents, and kind of cover any place I wanted from Harlem all the way down to the Village to make a recording session. And so those days was a lot of work was being done in semi-condemned buildings around East Broadway, down in Soho. And so we would go down to a place called Megaphone, I think it was called, and sit down and play, just the two of us. Little did I know that I was playing myself into a situation that would end up being the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Now, I asked some of my drummer friends and guys you would know, just to throw some questions at me that I would include, because I told them I was talking to you. One of them was, around that period, how did you come up with, and this is their quote, that like sort of big bombastic style with the fast tom rolls and the left-handed lead?
One chocolate chip cookie. What I heard, it just was the way the music was, the way I interpreted what he was playing. I heard that approach. I developed that approach kind of naturally. We kept playing together, and I kept hearing kind of things that ideas kept coming to my mind, and I was given carte blanche as to play within the template that he offered, which was it was a very disciplined template. Tempo was very important. Timing was very important. Understanding how to phrase was very important. Okay. If you could play, I saw odd meters, as they call it, as it was called, 7 and 5, 9, 10, 13, as being phrases that continue to come back round. And I could hear that they were, it was definitely this was happening. So I could play inside that phrase. Two things that drummers tend to not focus upon enough. One is playing in triplets. Another is playing slowly. You can always play very fast. And of course, the visual thing is off the hook. Okay, you may get an Academy Award, but if you're playing slow, but in tempo, the only people who are going to recognize you for that are the people who are playing with you, because it's very difficult to play ballads and to play them with feeling. Because again, artists tend to protect themselves. They don't want to show who they really are through the music. They're concerned that they're opening up themselves to ridicule. Easier said than done. It's just the way we're made up. And that happens in ballads. If you want to hear ballads played, listen to Bill Evans, the pianist. Some of the ballads, Miles, of course. It is coming from a space in their history, in their timeline, where they're sharing something that's so special to them. Sometimes in ballads, there's a lot of pain, and it comes out slowly that way. And when you play odd meters, you want to be able to use the use of duple patterns or triple patterns and control them. That means you have to have control over every limb on your body. That control comes from the computer called your brain. If you don't keep them balanced, if you're not if your left leg is your weak leg and it's not trained at least 2/3 as well as your right leg, you're going to be out of sync. So you have to practice them. These are things that are normally overlooked by drummers because they're looking to look good, not to sound good, not to be consistent. I'm really thankful for that because it means I get more work. So that's the whole objective. Keep doing that. It's good.
Did you always have a mind to do a solo career? And how did you get that first deal that led to Spectrum?
Okay. No, I thought that I was going to be a studio musician. That's when I went to music and art high school. I was preparing myself to play anything from Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus, as a job, right straight through doing jingles and commercials for whomever, Kraft Foods or whatever, airlines, to playing in New York Philharmonic and being able to cover the bases. As a sub, I didn't know if I wanted to have the chair because that bogged me down. I loved just playing music. And another thing I didn't want to do was teach because I felt it bogged me down. It meant that I had to be, it's like a 9 to 5, and that wasn't going to get me in what I really felt I could accomplish. So I was kind of really happy with being a musical Ronin. I just wanted to play the Latin thing, go out and play that, and then turn around and come back in and play with Joe Cocker, and enjoy myself, because I knew where he was coming from. I could understand, the grooves. I mean, that was what was happening for me. So I fit well into Creed Taylor's plans at CTI and Verve. But the music kept changing. And we did the Brazilian thing, and we did straight ahead stuff. And I was for me, the greatest rhythm sections players in the world. I had piano players, Keith Jarrett, Herbie Hancock, Bob James, Roland Hanna. Just there alone, and there are more, and I can't remember the names. Then my partner in percussion would be Ayrton Moreira, or someone like this. Let's see, bass, Ron Carter, of course, primarily. And that rhythm section will stand up to anybody. Yeah, Sebesky is the arranger and piano, Emir Deodato. All these different things that come in my way. And all I have to do is lay it down. That's all. And just, not only that, first I have to be there on time. And on time doesn't mean when the session starts. On time means for the drummer an hour before the session starts so that you could play when the session starts,
Another way drummers have to keep time. Yeah.
In a very, very important way, you have to keep time to get to the studio, to set everything up so that you can be in time with what's happening in the studio. Take this off a minute.
Time to get comfortable.
I'm good. I'm home. And so these are all lessons learned, not by people telling me, but by the actions of people around me who do it. And when it doesn't happen, all of a sudden, the thing is like, well, man, what are you here so late for? The session starts in 15 minutes, but you're trying to put a bass drum on. You're not going to be ready in 15 minutes. The words are very few. It's the action that counts. When the phones don't ring anymore, then you have to ask yourself why. What is it that you did not do that was necessary to make it? Oh, you may have played very well on those sessions, but how about the one that's coming up? Can you be trusted to play on that if you're not going to be on time?
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you very much.